Syria's government says it has cleared Bedouin fighters from the predominantly Druze city of Suwayda and declared a halt to the deadly clashes there, hours after deploying security forces to the restive southern region. The announcement on Saturday came after Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara ordered a new ceasefire between Bedouin and Druze groups, following a separate United States brokered deal to avert further Israeli military intervention in the clashes. Shortly before the government's claim, there were reports of machine gun fire in the city of Suwayda, as well as mortar shelling in nearby villages. There were no immediate reports of casualties. Nur al-Din Baba, a spokesman for the Syrian Ministry of Interior, said in a statement carried by the official Sana'a news agency that the fighting ended following intensive efforts to implement the ceasefire agreement and the deployment of government forces in the northern and western areas of Suwayda province. He said the city of Suwayda, located in the province's west, has now been cleared of all tribal fighters, and clashes within the city's neighborhoods have been brought to a halt. Israeli intervention. The fighting broke out last week when the abduction of a Druze truck driver on a public highway set off a series of revenge attacks and resulted in tribal fighters from all over the country streaming into Suwayda in support of the Bedouin community there. The clashes drew in Syrian government troops, too. Israel intervened in the conflict on Wednesday, carrying out heavy air attacks on Suwayda and Syria's capital, Damascus, claiming it was to protect the Druze community after leaders of the minority group accused government forces of abuses against them. Syrian government troops withdrew from Suwayda on Thursday. At least 260 people have been killed in the fighting, and 1,700 others have been wounded, according to the Syrian Ministry of Health. Other groups, however, put the figure at more than 900 killed. More than 87,000 people have also been displaced. The fighting is the latest challenge to al-Shara's government, which took over after toppling President Bashar al-Assad in December. Al-Shara, in a televised statement on Saturday, called on all parties to lay down arms and help the government restore peace. While we thank the Bedouin clans for their heroic stance, we call on them to adhere to the ceasefire and follow the orders of the state, he said. All should understand this moment requires unity and full cooperation, so we can overcome these challenges and preserve our country from foreign interference and internal sedition. He condemned Israel's intervention in the unrest, saying it pushed the country into a dangerous phase that threatened its stability. After the president's announcement, the Syrian government began deploying troops to Suwayda, and Bedouin groups said they would withdraw from the city of Suwayda. Following consultations with all members of Suwayda's clans and tribes, we have decided to adhere to the ceasefire, prioritize reason and restraint, and allow the state's authorized institutions the space to carry out their responsibilities in restoring security and stability, the Bedouin faction said in a statement. Therefore, we declare that all our fighters have been withdrawn from the city of Suwayda, they added. Al Jazeera's Mohammed Val, reporting from Damascus, said the Druze, too, seemed to have accepted the truce. Hikmat al-Hajri, a prominent spiritual leader, has called for all Bedouin fighters to be escorted safely out of Suwayda, he said. Security forces from the Interior Ministry have been deployed to help separate rival groups and oversee the implementation of the ceasefire. But there are still reports of ongoing fighting in the city, with some Druze leaders voicing strong opposition to the cessation of hostilities, he said. So while there is hope, there is also doubt that this conflict is over, Val added. World welcomes truce. Jordan, meanwhile, hosted talks with Syria and the U.S. on efforts to consolidate the ceasefire in Suwayda. Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi, his Syrian counterpart Assad al-Shibani, and the U.S. Special Envoy for Syria, Thomas Barak, discussed the situation in Syria and efforts to consolidate the ceasefire reached around Suwayda Governorate to prevent bloodshed and preserve the safety of civilians, according to a readout by the Jordanian government. The three officials agreed on practical steps to support the ceasefire, including the release of detainees held by all parties, Syrian security force deployments, and community reconciliation efforts. Safadi also welcomed the Syrian government's commitment to holding accountable all those responsible for violations against Syrian citizens in the Suwayda area, the statement said. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also commented on the developments in Syria in a post on X, urging Syrian government troops to prevent fighters from entering Suwayda and carrying out massacres. They must hold accountable and bring to justice anyone guilty of atrocities, including those in their own ranks, he said. Furthermore, the fighting between Druze and Bedouin groups inside the perimeter must also stop immediately. Countries around the world also called for the truce to be upheld. The United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, said in a post on X that he was horrified by the violence in southern Syria and that a sustainable ceasefire is vital. France's Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs stressed the need for Syrian authorities to ensure the safety and rights of all segments of the Syrian people and called for investigations into abuses against civilians in Suwayda. Japan also expressed concern over the violence, including the Israeli strikes, and called for the ceasefire to be implemented swiftly. It added that it strongly urges all parties concerned to exercise maximum restraint, preserve Syria's territorial integrity and national unity, and respect its independence and sovereignty. Source: Al Jazeera.